Hello, my name's Stephen Geffins. I'm Assistant Vice Principal International at the University of St Andrews, and welcome to the latest of our Scotland's Future Series podcasts. And today I'm joined by my colleague Derek Watson, who's the university's Chief Operating Officer, otherwise known as the Quaestor at the university, by Ros Class, who is the Director of Student Experience, and by Jeff Morris, who's Director of the Eden campus, where we're broadcasting from today, the new campus out in Guardbridge. Today's subject is one that I know will be really important to a lot of people who are listening, and it's really important to us here at the university as well, and that's about the cost of living and the support that's being provided for staff and students. So Jeff, Derek, before I come on to you, Ros, you're the Director of Student Experience. Can you just give us an idea of the cost of living crisis and how it's impacting our staff and students, but also on how it's what kind of general terms response the university is providing on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Stephen. I think when this started becoming more talked about last summer, and obviously some of these challenges have been around always. A number of our students and staff will always be facing challenges related to affordability of attending university. But it really amplified and made us focus even more so on what we could be doing. And we know that things like accommodation, that groceries, that travel and utilities bills, these are things which are hitting people hardest. Yeah. And what we wanted to do was really look at where could we as an institution help. This is affecting everyone. It's not just a university problem. It's not just a St Andrews challenge. This is happening across the country, across the sector. But what things could we maybe be doing more actively? We've pulled together a group of colleagues and student representatives to think about where might we quickly be able to do things, but also longer term, what could we continue to think about? Because some things, I mean, this isn't going anywhere quickly. We know that some of these challenges are going to stay with us for quite a long time, so we need to think about more kind of sustainable and longer term viable ways of supporting people. But I guess in a nutshell, things that we've done, and we've looked at food. So our cafes were really quite quickly able to look at kind of how they priced some of their meals. Now, that's something we need to continue looking at in terms of how we ensure food is affordable, but also how we can continue it as an institution. We're looking at redistribution of food that's unsold. I think we still want to explore the idea of kind of community larder type things. Yeah. We need to be working with our students and our students' union on these kinds of activities as well. We also looked at promoting some of the things we're doing already, pulling together one resource, a cost of living webpage. It kind of says these are the spaces you can go to. This is the kind of activity and support that's ongoing. We've been working with colleagues in careers around how to better promote part-time working opportunities. Again, many of our students already and always have worked part-time throughout their university experience, but we knew and we anticipated that that might become a more pressing need for some of our students. So how could we continue to promote what that support was? Okay. And then we've also looked at things like transport, and I suspect we'll come on to that in a bit.
So that's a really important point, transport and the costs. Now, Derek, we've introduced a new and quite innovative scheme around transport, which is obviously for a number of staff and students quite a big cost if people are travelling around, be it to St Andrews, Guardbridge and elsewhere. Can you tell us a little bit about the deal that we've got with Stagecoach and how we're helping out with some of those transport costs?
What I would say is the origins of this deal actually happened pre-COVID, when we were relocating several hundred of our professional services colleagues from the town centre 4 miles out to the Eden campus here in Guardbridge. And we recognised that making transport easy and affordable, i.e. the university picking up the tab, was going to be an issue. And we looked into, with Stagecoach, having our ID badges accepted on the buses, and we could do that. But there wasn't a simple way for either organisation to simply and efficiently process those transactions. You wind forward to after COVID, where colleagues really haven't commuted on a daily basis for a couple of years, and suddenly commuting costs are being noticed.
Yes, of course.
You're having to fill the car up with petrol more times, or the cost of getting on a bus is quite frankly becoming a barrier. And at that point we re-engaged with Stagecoach to say, could we go back to using our ID badges as a way we could do it? And they, in the interim, had developed an app which we could isolate using our email addresses with our systems, and we could capture where members of the university community were purchasing tickets and then using them in a way that Stagecoach could administer, we could administer, and it allowed us to look at some of the cost pressures that Ross has talked about and actually tackle it and say, we'll try and give as big a discount as we can to staff and to students. And we can do it quickly and efficiently, and it was a game changer.
Yeah.
Now, Derek, you just talked about because of there was the real impetus there pre-COVID because of the opening up of the campus. Jeff, you're the director here at the campus. Can you talk us through what this has meant for people who are working here? Because obviously the offices in the campus in St Andrews are still a really important part of everybody's work, but you've got the offices and fantastic resources here as well. So what impact has that deal with the buses made on people who live and work here?
I think the impact is we're still working on identifying the real detail, because we're only 6 months into the scheme.
Sure.
But essentially 450 colleagues moved out of St Andrews and in theory would be coming to work here. Mm-hmm. So Derek's point at the beginning about we needed to move those people from A to B, from St Andrews to Guardbridge, that was our first challenge. How do we cover that? And then we've got a bit more ambitious with the current scheme with Stagecoach, say, well, where do people live and how do they get to work? And most of those people are coming here because our main administrative centre is here. And we've had some wonderful feedback from colleagues saying things like it's game-changing for them. And I think the take-up, because the deal we were able to do with Stagecoach was so advantageous to staff, the take-up has been really phenomenal.
So in what way, just on that point, you say game-changing, in what way has it become game-changing for colleagues?
You've reinforced the people that already used to use the bus, and they're returning to work, as Derek was saying, after COVID. Yeah. They know that they're coming back to work, but at a much more affordable level. They're only paying a quarter of what they used to pay. I think that's a huge advantage. But it's encouraged others to leave their cars at home, and that is the bit that we were hoping would happen and that we've been able to drive.
Good, so I want to come on to this, Derek, then I want to chat to you, Ross, just in a moment about some of the broader implications. But we're obviously here to talk about the cost of living crisis. It'll be the foremost of people's minds, and it was one of the drivers, in fairness, behind this project. But actually, tackling the cost of living crisis and tackling the climate crisis are not exclusive. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the impact that this has had on our efforts to tackle the climate emergency?
This is one of these instances where your values, for us that was about reducing our climate impact, and what you value, money, were aligning. Yeah. And we were able to say to our staff and our students, a big chunk of our commuting, a big chunk of our carbon is the carbon on you commuting to and from work. Now, many of you are only doing that around half the time now. That's great. But let's try and go at that other residual carbon. Stop bringing your car, use the public transport, and have that benefit. And by able to bring the two together, I hope that becomes more sustainable, even beyond the cost of living crisis, and we actually start tackling some of those wider strategic priorities.
Good. And are you noticing buy-in among staff and students that you're dealing with in your day-to-day work, Ross, into that as well in terms of tackling, because obviously with the climate emergency we all have responsibilities as individuals, but actually we have a responsibility as an institution as well.
Absolutely, and I think many of our students, they've come here partly because they know what our values are, and environmental sustainability being one of those. And when we looked at what we could be doing relating to the cost of living challenges, we did also think, well, hang on, are there areas where we can be addressing both of these crises as well? And can we also be further promoting some of the work that our students are already doing in this space? So our Students Association pulled together a cost of living guide, and in that they're also talking about pre-existing initiatives like the St Andrews network, so actually encouraging reuse of items and the sharing and circular economy. And I mentioned previously, didn't I, around redistribution, or distribution I should say, of unsold food items. So all of these things, they, as well as helping people's wallets, they're also addressing some of the challenges that are contributing to the climate crisis, food waste being a big one and consumption patterns being another one. So I think there is a good level of buy-in from our students. I think we also need to continue working with our student representatives to understand what could we be doing more, what could we be doing differently, but it is also around how do we sustain that in our broader strategic priorities. How do we embed this going forward rather than just reacting, where that's not necessarily always going to be the most viable going forward.
And then I'm going to ask Jeff you the same question in a moment about here, but I mean we can put up the figures around this and the statistics around it, and that's a really important way, Derek, for you and your work to measure this. But let me just move away from that for a moment in terms of the human impact. What are people telling you about it?
Yeah. I think broadly speaking they appreciate what we're doing.
Sure, yeah.
We've kept a kind of feedback form open for people to get in touch. Yes, there are always going to be people saying, please, we need more of this, more of that. But then there are also people saying, thank you, this matters, and it shows you care and it shows you're doing something.
So is it making a difference?
I think it is. Yeah.
Jeff, is that something that you're picking up when you're speaking to
colleagues? I think so. And I don't think we should forget it makes a difference for the bus companies too. Yeah. They've been through a period of little or no business. And so with any relationship like this, it needs to be a two-way street, excuse the pun. And I think for Stagecoach in this example, they were very keen to talk to us about how they could get more people back onto the buses. Yeah. And so I think people I've spoken to, colleagues that have said, "Oh, I haven't been on a bus for years."
Yeah, okay.
They don't all sound like that. But yes, exactly.
Yeah. So you're finding that you're getting that change in habit, that cultural change is starting to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course our students of, if you like, traditional age up to 22, it's free for them anyway, public transport. But for the more mature students and colleagues, this is it really is. I go back to my point. It's a game changer.
Yeah. Good. And I know that you're focused on the bottom line at the university, as you should be, Derek. But in terms of your conversations with colleagues around campus, what are you picking up about the impact this has made?
We did a survey,
and
there was one person wrote back and said, this is the best thing the university's ever done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was giving help back where it was needed, when it was needed. I can think of another piece of feedback where I got when I was walking across campus, and someone said to me, you're saving me £250 a week.
Wow, okay.
And I couldn't continue to come here if I wasn't getting that support. And that's why it's mattering. It's not just the money, it's not just the carbon. It's allowing people to retain their engagement, and they're seeing that this is a community that supports our staff and our students, and we're doing all we possibly can, especially at this time.
This is a big investment.
It's a significant investment.
But something that's important to the university in terms of cost of living crisis, but also the climate emergency as well. So it's fair to say that this is something that people should continue to look out for information. I want to come to you about that, but this is something that...
Yeah, and I would encourage people to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
We are trying to drive changes in society. Yes, there is a cost, but this is one of the behaviours that will be good in the long term for us all. And I would encourage as many people as they can, whether they had looked at public transport before or hadn't. This is a viable option to try and make these things sustainable and lasting themselves. As Jeff has said, putting more people on the buses helps the bus companies retain the services, build up the quantity of services, as well as managing the cost.
Yeah.
So, Ros, people are listening to this, they've heard it, but they've said, maybe I'm not taking as much advantage as I should be. Where should people go to look for some information around
Our
this?
website, in the search bar, cost of living. We've pulled it all into one place, and we're also making sure that if anything new is introduced or if anything changes, that's where it goes. So it's all in one searchable place on the St Andrews webpage.
Jeff, same for colleagues in Guardbridge at the Eden campus. Anything you'd like to point them to, or if they're watching this and thinking...
No, I think one website, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Ros has already got it in hand.
Good. And Derek, as the Quaestors, are there any messages that you want to put out there in terms of some of the challenges that we're facing as an institution and what the commitment is of the university going forward?
We are facing many challenges as an institution. It's a competitive place, it's an expensive place, and we are feeling as many of those pressures. But we have to carefully target where we spend our money. This is one where I think we are having real benefits to this community on a day-to-day basis where it matters for them. We are also striving towards our strategic benefits. We have extended the 6-month trial by a further 6-month trial. Part of that so that we understand the patterns of behaviours over a full 12-month period, and we can reflect and decide, is the scheme correct as it is? Should we be doing it slightly differently? We are clearly trying to look at some of the smaller operators. I said earlier that the Stagecoach app was a game changer in allowing us to engage. We are trying to work with some of the smaller operators, and we'll see what we can do. We would like to extend this to some of those more remote routes where different companies operate. But I sincerely hope that come October, November, when we're reviewing the next 6 months of this trial, that we're saying this is something that's strategically important to us and we would like to continue it in some shape.
Is a message here, yes, look for the information that Ros and Jeff have highlighted, but is there also an appeal, please fill out the surveys, because this is actually informing how the university will be investing in the projects going forward?
I think it's two things. One, see if you can change your behaviours, use public transport, reduce your carbon, and still get to work when you need to, or get to study when you need to. And secondly, gathering data on this is really difficult. The only means we've got are these surveys, and I would encourage anyone within the community, complete the survey, tell us what you really think, tell us how often you're using this, and from that we can help to build the plans for the future that will be sustainable.
Perfect. Jeff, Ros, Derek, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. You heard the Quaestor. Great if people are using it, but please give us the feedback as well. It's so important in informing this project and these investments going forward. Thank you.